Hi, I'm Paul, and this is the fourth and final session of our small group series called Getting Out of the Living Room, how to show love for our communities by being in our communities. And hopefully you've had a chance to do the previous three sessions because this is the session where we put it all together. We figure out how to connect all the things that we've learned, everything that we've heard from God, into this moment where we start looking at ways to actually engage our community, to have good conversations, and hopefully conversations that encourage people to explore who God is, have a chance to get to know Him for the very, very first time. So let's go ahead and jump right in and talk about some things we could do. So hopefully you've finished the scavenger hunt. If you haven't yet, that's totally fine. We can go ahead and dive in, but at least have it scheduled and begun work in putting that together. Because the information you get from that scavenger hunt about your community is going to help you come up with ideas of places that you want to engage them. There are three basic areas that I like to tell people they can engage their community. First of all, they can engage their community through their hobbies. So think about this. If you're like me, you probably have a list of hobbies that you would like to try before the day you die. Like one day I want to be able to ride on a Harley Davidson motorcycle and maybe even own one. And that would be a whole lot of fun. Or maybe you just want to learn something like a skill, like I want to know how to repair my 20-year-old Ford Ranger without having to take it to the shop. You know, those are some neat things, and those are some things that I can do or I could get people to help me do that would put me around people and have long-lasting conversations with them. The other thing to do is to show care. We do this a lot as a church. We'll go serve at a homeless shelter or a soup kitchen, or maybe go and paint a local shelter or something of that nature. But the purpose of that is we want to demonstrate the care and concern of Christ in our community. But for me, I want to make sure that when I'm showing care, it gives me a chance to talk to people and even talk to the same people on a regular basis. And that'll become very apparent as we move forward as to why that's so important. The third one is your job. Maybe you have a job in the community. Maybe you're looking at getting a job in the community. And through our workplaces, we can have the conversations necessary to introduce people to Jesus. Now, I know you've got to be thinking that wouldn't be tolerated in my work environment, but I want to talk to you about how it can happen naturally and reduce that confrontation evangelistic style that often gets us into trouble. But those are three ways that we can engage the community: through our hobbies, either our hobbies or our kids' hobbies. That's a good one too. The showing care for people, and then our vocation. Now, when we do those things, we have to talk to people. Okay? And I know you're going, oh, I don't know how to talk to people. I get so nervous when I have to talk to them, or I'm just not good at chit chat, or I don't like being around large groups. I'm more introverted. That is okay. Everyone has an opportunity within their giftings to talk to people, and it's a skill set that we can get a little bit better at. My family many of them are introverts. But all that means is it's not that they don't like being around people, it's like they want to be around smaller groups of people and have deeper, more meaningful conversations. And by small, I mean sometimes one-on-one or one-on-two. Or unlike me, who's very extroverted, and I like to be around lots of people all the time. So my wife looks at me sometimes and goes, well, I just don't know how to start conversations. And so we live in the Pacific Northwest, and there are a lot of coffee shacks called Dutch Brothers, filled with very vibrant, outgoing young people. And what I tell people all the time is that if you don't know how to start conversations, I want you to give yourself permission to go to Dutch Brothers or something similar like that one day a week for an entire week. So I'm sorry, every day a week for the entire week. And write down the questions that they ask to get the conversation going. Like, for example, if you go to Dutch Bros, then every Friday they're going to ask you something about your weekend plans. So they go, what kind of awesome things do you have planned for the weekend? And what's really cool is if you take that same question and go ask someone else that question later that day, they'll get super excited and jump right in and tell you what's going on. I've had people do that to me over and over again. I'll take the question I hear in Dutch Bros and I'll go buy my groceries at Walmart, and I'll use the question with the person bagging my groceries, and they will sit and become alive and tell me what's going on in their life that weekend. Super excited. You should try it. So regardless of where you choose, whether it's a hobby or you're showing care and concern or you're at your place of work, you need to put yourself in positions where you can talk to people, whether that's one-on-one, one-on-two, or one on a group. It doesn't really matter as long as you can talk with the same people on a regular basis, once a week, multiple times a week, several times a month, you name it, just a regular basis. And this is what it's going to look like. You're going to have some conversations that are very, very casual. Okay, so hey, how you doing? Oh, I'm doing great. Got to get that report turned into Marty today. Been working all night on it. Oh, okay. Do you need any help on that? No, not really. I got it. Okay, so that's a casual conversation. It's giving you some information about a person, but it hasn't in any way made them vulnerable or given an opportunity for you to have made fun of them or something like that, unless you were just a really mean person. And so those casual conversations are the way most conversations start off. You probably have, 10, 20, 30 casual conversations over the course of the day without even realizing that that's what you're having. But those are important because that's where conversations start. It's where relationships start. But eventually, if we have enough casual conversations with people, those conversations are going to become meaningful. A meaningful conversation is when somebody takes it a step beyond casual and shares something that leaves them a little bit vulnerable. So you might go up to someone and say, hey, how are you doing today? And they go, I'm not doing so well. I just found out that my daughter is really struggling at school, and we're going to have to figure out a way to get her some help. You see, in that moment, you can feel it. You feel that transition, the weight of what somebody is sharing with you. And now it's time for a meaningful conversation. And a great way to do things if you don't know what to do when somebody shares something like that is you can say, wow, that sounds really heavy. How are you holding up? The other thing you could say is, man, that's really rough. How do you feel about that? Or, well, what are some of the options that you're considering? So it's not that you have to give them advice in that moment. You want to further the conversation and be a listening ear. And so just opening that door and saying, hey, tell me more, I care about you, is a huge step forward in building relationships with people. So they go from casual and they go from meaningful. And by the way, just as a side note, that understanding how to further meaningful conversations will not only help you meet people who don't know Jesus, but it'll also help you with your relationship with your children or with your spouse or with your friends and coworkers as well. So this is good information for wherever you are in life. But you're going to go from casual to meaningful, and then the next one hopefully is spiritual conversations. And what that is as a follower of Christ, I want to encourage you not to hide the fact that you're a follower of Christ. Now, I'm not saying to be obnoxiously religious. You don't have to have the ichthus on your car or wear the Jesus Band t-shirts and go around talking about whether you voted conservative or liberal, depending on how you've interpreted what that means within your understanding of Christianity and your walk with Christ. I don't want you to be that guy or that girl, okay? I want you instead to be what I call conspicuously spiritual. And that means you don't shy away from letting people know that you love Jesus and that you go to church and that you hang out with people and you're learning more and trying to be better. You don't have a problem admitting your faults and failures and asking for forgiveness because that's what Christ taught us to do. That's what I'm talking about. You don't have a problem showing care and concern for people because of the care and concern that you've been shown, both by Christ and by other believers as well. And you don't shy away from offering to pray for people or to listen to them and things like that. So when you're spiritual like that, it helps people understand that you're a safe place to have those conversations. Now let me say this too. If you're the kind of person that shoves Christianity down someone else's throat or argues with people or condemns whether they celebrate Halloween or not, then it's going to be difficult for them to find you to be a safe place. Instead, I want you to work on living out what it means to be a Christ follower, giving words to that often, and that is okay, because I believe that if you don't give words, then people will just try to figure out why you're doing something, and they'll figure out whatever makes sense to them. They might think you're a vegetarian, and that's why you're such a good person, or you must practice yoga a lot. rather than be a Christian if you don't let them know that you love Jesus, and that's the motivation behind what you do. But you're going to have to strike a balance on that, whether it's as to whether it's too much or too little, and you're going to have to figure out what's appropriate for you and in your setting. But don't hide the fact that you love Christ, even in difficult countries where you'll get persecuted for your love for Jesus. I say it's better that they know that you follow Christ than to assume that you have no religion because you've hidden the fact that you love God. Okay? So as you're engaging in all of that, you're going to have spiritual opportunities where people come up to you and they'll ask questions, just sometimes totally out of the blue. I had one not too long ago where a guy that I know and have been talking with a lot, we'd had some casual and meaningful conversations. One day I went into his shop and he looked at me and he said, "Paul, what does the Bible say about divorce?" And I knew in that moment that we were having a significant conversation. It was meaningful, but also primarily spiritual, because he was asking me about Scripture. And I just remember looking at him and saying, well, God never wanted divorce to happen. But he gave it to us because he understood that sometimes we have hard hearts and can't forgive one another. But no matter how it happens, from everyone I've talked to and what I can tell from the Bible, divorce is a terrible thing that God didn't intend, and it leaves everyone hurt and broken. But he loves them and can forgive them, and he can heal that over time, and he can even heal the relationship if both parties are willing to work on it. Now, I didn't say it that eloquently, but over the course of about a 20-minute conversation, that's what we talked about. And I pointed out some different scriptures in there. And so that was a spiritual conversation. Now, if you handle that first conversation well, and even if you blow it, you can still recover. It's not a problem. But if you handle that conversation well, chances are people are going to come back to you for more spiritual conversations. And so then you're going to help them, after maybe you've had 5 to 15 spiritual conversations, you're going to sit there and say, hey, you're asking a lot of great questions. And I would love to explore all the questions that you have. If we could read the Bible together, or maybe you could come to my church and deal with some of them there, because we have some growth groups that are open for people who are just exploring faith, maybe for the first time. And you can invite them into that. And if you're interested in having a Bible study, maybe they don't want to come to your church, but would love to meet you for coffee, then I've got some questions and some scriptures that you could go through with them. Just send me an email to pwatson, P as in Paul, pwatson, at contagiousdisciplemaking.com. So pwatson@contagiousdisciplemaking.com. And I will send you the questions and some of the passages that I use to begin having this discovery environment. And a discovery environment is a low-risk environment where people can come in and begin explore faith in their own time and in their own way by asking questions and wrestling through. It's not an environment where we preach at people or tell them that they're wrong. It's an environment where they come in and they go, I've never thought of that before. I need to consider that. Or they wrestle with some of the hard things. So we have these kind of conversations, and as you get together with your group, you're going to talk about that. So let's say you're going through the week and you met Jill and you met Jack and you had a brief casual conversation with them. You learned their names, which is important, and you're going to see them maybe down the road. So when you share with your group, you might write down their names in that quadrant of casual conversations. And maybe you had a meaningful conversation with Sarah, and she talked about how her kids were struggling at school because while you were waiting for your toddlers to get out of toddler gymnastic classes. And you're going to write that down. And writing that down and keeping track of the conversation is very important for the next reason. And that is, we're going to pray intentionally for these people. This is not just lifestyle evangelism. It's not being nice and likable and hoping that people will ask us about Jesus. Instead, it's intentionally engaging communities, creating opportunities by being conspicuously spiritual people for people to realize that we're a safe place to talk. And then we're going to pray for people as we begin to engage them. So here's what we're going to do. In the case with Jack and Jill, I'm going to come back to my group and tell them about the conversation we had. And then I'm going to ask the group, hey guys, I'm going to see Jack and Jill next week. Could you pray that we have an opportunity to have a meaningful conversation? And maybe you had a meaningful conversation with Sarah at toddler gymnastics, and you asked your group, hey guys, could you pray that I would have an opportunity to show Sarah that I'm a safe place to have a spiritual conversation? And here's the cool thing. You don't have to manipulate the conversation at all. We trust God and His Holy Spirit, who is at work ahead of us, to do all of that on our behalf. He's going to work in the heart and mind of Jack and Jill and let them know that we're a safe place to be open with and share their meaningful conversations. And He's going to be at work in the heart and mind of Sarah and share it with her that, hey, you know that thing that you've been wanting to ask for a long time? This person could help. So the other day, I was sitting down with a group in Redmond, Oregon. And literally, I took a napkin, just like this one. This is actually the napkin I had. And we took the names of the people and we rewrote them down just as we were sharing stories over breakfast. This is not a reporting time. It's a, hey, let's talk about this week. How did we have casual, meaningful, spiritual conversations? How did they go? And so I wrote down some of the casual ones and some of the meaningful ones and the spiritual one. Actually, we had one spiritual conversation, which was awesome. And then that gives me a chance to pray for each of these people that God would move them through the quadrants and into a place where they can discover who He is and have an opportunity to find and follow Him and fall deeply in love with Him and then help others do the very, very same thing. Guys, there's a fancy word in the Bible for this. It's called making disciples. Making disciples begins when the first time we meet people and have a casual conversation and we begin to pray that we would create opportunities for them to have an opportunity to discover God and then for them to also be able to help others do the same. That's the beginning point of disciple making. And you're a disciple maker as you engage your communities and show the love for Christ through everything that you do. Now, the fourth one, and by now you should know this, I want you to have fun. Christians should have the most fun of any people on the planet. We should be filled with joy. We should have adventures, guys. Like, let's look at it this way. What if you went and found a Groupon for 1 month's worth of Taekwondo classes for $50 and you got the free uniform that went with it? And you're like, you know what? I've always wanted to study Taekwondo. I've never done it. I'm probably going to be terrible. But, $50 for a month is not a problem. So you go in and you pay that $50, you get your free little uniform, you put it on, you go to your first class, and you get a chance to sit there and see people on a regular basis over the course of the month and have casual and meaningful and spiritual conversations. Now you're like, how can we do that in a month? Well, you know what? That's the power of Christ. You don't have to make it happen. You just have to show up, you have to be listening, you have to pay attention to what God is doing, and you and your group need to commit together to pray for the people that you're meeting and ask God to move those relationships on. And trust me, you're going to have some good ones. What are some things that I've done? Well, I've studied Taekwondo, and I've studied Krav Maga, and I started a Pokemon club one time. Yep, for sure. And I have gone to gaming museums and played board games with strangers and all sorts of things. I've gone to the same coffee shop every day for like a month to get to know the people that come in and come out. And let me just tell you, all of it has been fun. I've really enjoyed it. And even if it didn't lead to people finding and following Jesus, it led to me becoming a more in-depth, better person. And I'm able to then draw from that well, that deep well that I've created of experience to help others later down the road. Every skill set I've learned from having fun and engaging people has benefited me somewhere down the road, and usually in a way that brings honor and glory to Christ. It's just a great way to live. Now, the last thing I want to let you know is don't be afraid to move on. So let's say you finish your Groupon in Taekwondo and you've had some casual conversations, but they haven't ever gone meaningful. Pray about it. But if you don't sense that they're going to go anywhere, you don't feel like it's the right environment, then move on. It's fine. Give the people that you've had casual conversations with your Facebook and tell them to find you there, or your phone number and say, hey, if you ever want to go out and have coffee sometime, let me know. And then see what happens and move on and try something new. Not only is it exciting to try new things, but also you don't want to spin your wheels in a place that isn't going to bear any fruit. Life's too short for that, and you've got a limited amount of time. So don't be afraid to move on. And if you really didn't like it, like you get to end of Taekwondo and you said, man, I hated that, then move on. You don't have to sit there and do something that you absolutely hate. We can do anything for about a month to know whether we liked it or not. But definitely don't want you to do it more than that if you don't like it at all. So let's talk about some actions, okay? Here's what I want you to do. Action number 1, find a Groupon or coupon for a free or cheap trial of at a local gym, spin class, yoga, or Taekwondo studio. Enroll and have some casual conversations with the people that you meet and share your experience with your group. Action number 2, find a place to serve, like a soup kitchen or homeless shelter. Set up 4 times to serve and have casual conversations with the people that you meet. Share your experiences with your group. And action number 3, pay attention to the types of conversations you have at work. Write the names of people in their respective quadrants, casual, meaningful, spiritual, or discovery, and share your notes with your group. And then finally, and I didn't add this in, but make sure that when you share those with your group, that all of you sit down and you pray. And then the next week when you get together, you open your notes back up, you look at those names of those people, and you can either take them off the list because maybe you're not engaging them anymore, or maybe you sit there and you're like, yeah, I need to engage that person again. Or maybe you're like, oh wow, we started having more meaningful conversations, so let's move them from casual to meaningful. And it can get to be a lot of fun. This is what it means to live a life of engagement and going out and intentionally making a difference and serving and having our hobbies and working in a community in such a way that's going to honor God and help people find and follow Him. And I can't tell you this enough. Have fun. Have fun. Don't forget to have fun.